I want my seaside photographs to be more interesting, but there's no point just wanting. You actually have to have a plan and go out and start doing. Now we need to go back 2 weeks when I first started thinking about this shoot. So a few weeks ago I had an idea. I wanted to go out and try and improve my seaside photography. I came across an old video that I'd produced a number of years ago that still does reasonably well on YouTube, and I thought, you know what, I want to try some long exposure photography again. But I needed some equipment, so I've got onto the mobile phone, got onto a site that I really like checking out, and I've found some Lee big stopper filters which are really quite affordable. So they both turned up and arrived, the Lee big stopper and the super stopper, so that's a 15 and a 10 stop to go with the 6 stop that I carry anyway with me, and we're going to go back out and see what we can do. And I couldn't think of a better way than to actually come down to my hometown in Plymouth, where I know the location really well and there's some great seascape opportunities to be had. The neutral density filters are normally used by photographers to cut down the amount of light that is entering the camera lens, and this makes perfect sense if you're shooting in really bright conditions. What I've done is I've come down slightly earlier in the morning, just after sunrise, when the light levels are a bit lower, and I'm going to use those neutral density filters to force some really long exposures so we can get creative with our seascape photography. Now, as you would expect, I know my hometown reasonably well. So I had a shoot planned. I knew exactly where I was going to go. I hadn't been planning on my route to that shoot being blocked by coastal erosion. So, like all good photographers, what we need to do is improvise. And it's okay, because like I said, I know the location. I've got another idea where I could take a similar picture to the one that I'd planned. I've just discovered that one of the best things about long exposure photography is it gives you 3 minutes and 20 seconds precisely to drink some coffee. Now, I'm not 100% pleased with the first photograph that I took, but I'll put it up on the screen for you now anyway so you can look at it, and then I'm going to explain the composition that I've just taken, but I think it's much better. The idea of coming down to this spot originally was to have Drake's Island that you've just seen in the previous photograph reasonably brightly lit with the sun rising behind me and giving it some sort of relief against the background so it stood out. But the problem is this morning with the lighting the way that it is, and despite the sun coming in and out, as you can see behind me now, it's getting much brighter. It's not really doing that. It's not working. Maybe it's to do with the background and the cloud on the horizon. I don't know, but it's just not working the way that I want it to. But the photograph that I've set up here does work that way. Now, I've turned the camera around about, 120, 180 degrees, and I'm looking back in towards the coast. And what I've got is I've got this strip of very white buildings right in the centre of the frame, and below me I've got the rocks, the water itself, and above it the sky as well, which isn't that uninteresting. With long exposure for me, it's all about the simplification of the image. It's about removing some of those distracting elements and giving you a strong basis just to look at your main subject. So what I've managed to do with this is exactly those things. We've got the water in the foreground, and with the 3:20 exposure, that's going to be nicely blurred out. And with the sky as well, with those clouds, we might get a little bit of movement in the clouds. I'm probably going to crop this down into a panoramic, and we'll see how it goes. I've got one concern with this image, and that's the rocks down on the right hand corner. They're coming out very dark, because there's quite a big contrast range here. So maybe, I'm not sure, I might have to do a bit of exposure blending. So I'm going to take a couple of images now just to get those rocks, just to get the exposure correct on those rocks, and then if I need to blend those together later on, I can. Now, seeing this image and how it works really well with the fairly graphic nature of these buildings has given me another idea. I think I can get an even better photograph slightly around the corner and make use of some real graphic shapes that I know exist up on Plymouth Hoe. As a Plymouthian, there are many iconic locations that I could have chosen. But for this particular style of photography, there can't be anything better than Plymouth Lido. I'm having several problems taking these photographs at the moment. One of them, it's really getting quite later in the day and quite busy, which means there's a lot of people around, and I don't do well photographing and doing video when there's people around watching me. The other is the scene that I'm photographing really needs a wider angle lens than the one that I've got. But nevertheless, we've got the 24mm and that's what we're going to work with. In terms of trying to do long exposure photographs, one of the issues I'm getting right now at the moment is the fact that it's also getting breezier and everything's blowing around a little bit. And that means I've got to be really careful about making sure everything's locked down and stable, the tripod's not moving, and there's no vibration causing any unnecessary movement. So let me show you the setup and the composition that we've got, and then we'll take a look at that photograph. One of the issues I've been having, which I didn't mention just now, which I didn't expect to be honest, was that I'm getting quite a bit of light leak around the edges of the filter. And though it's got a sponge edge around it to stop it happening, it's still coming in from this side because the lighting is so strong. So I've put this around the edges just to try and stop that happening. It appears to have worked. So let's talk about the composition. Well, the composition's basically quite simple. I've tried to line up mainly the elements in the frame so that there's a clear line down the centre of the image with the fountain in the middle and then the flag post and the marker at the opposite end of the Lido. And then just have this curve and this arc and these nice graphic lines showing us our way around the frame. So it really is quite simple. We've got those nice stripes painted in the bottom of the pool, leading your eye out and into the distance. I'm not sure we're going to crop this. I might crop it actually as a 16:9 sort of image, but I'm not sure. I'm going to leave some of the fence in the bottom, I think some of that safety rail, just to sort of give it a base to the bottom of the image and contain those graphic elements within the frame. So we're going to see how that's going to work out. But I'm really quite pleased with the preview on the back of the frame. I may even edit it as a black and white to emphasize those key sort of graphic shapes even more than we've got now. So other than putting strange old cut off pieces of bag and strap around the end of the camera, I want to talk to you about the camera setup. So once again, I've fitted a neutral density filter. This time it's a 15 stop filter, which is giving me something in the region of 4-minute long exposure, which is really, really long. That's why I was saying that the wind is going to be a problem, because if this tripod moves at all, we're going to get those vibrations in the photograph. So I've been using my body to shelter the lens a little bit, and that's also helped cut out some of the light falling on this side of the image. I've enjoyed taking this photograph. I'm going to show you the finished result now, but I also think that there's some more graphic images that I can take. And I want to talk to you a little bit more about the slow shutter speed photography that I've been using. So I'm going to pack up, move down to my next location, and I'll see you down there. I've had to improvise several times this morning, and I find myself doing it again. The photograph which I'd planned to take around the side of the Lido and also the foreshore, and just taking in some of those curves and those white painted walls around the side of the front of Plymouth Hoe, would have worked really well. It would have been fantastic, but not today. The tide's out. I'm just left with green seaweed marking up the scene, and sludge and mud, and there's a lot of swimmers around as well, so it's not going to work. So I've improvised. I've walked a little bit further along the coast, and this is a little bit of an experimental image, because the picture I'm looking at taking could be the simplest one today. It's literally looking across to a part of Plymouth called Mountbatten, where there's a large causeway going out into Plymouth Sound. And I'm literally going to use that causeway of the sea and virtually nothing else, just to create a very plain, basic graphic image. Now I have got some headland in the background. I'm not quite sure if that's going to be in this image or not. I won't know until I actually process it and look at the different options, different reasons. But let's get this set up. taking this photograph as it is at the moment worked out reasonably well. It's been quite interesting to take it because there's been a lot of boats moving backwards and forwards, and working with a slow shutter speed of about 3 to 5 minutes, it's actually meant that those boats haven't come out on the frame because they've been moving through and haven't recorded. So that's another advantage of slow shutter speeds. Now it's really getting quite bright at the moment, so I've had to put my hand across the top of the lens, as well as put this cloth around the front to actually protect it. So just have a look at this composition and see what you think. So to get these images today, I've been using something called bulb mode photography. I've touched on it very, very briefly. I've talked about how important it is to get the tripod locked down, how I've been using a cable release, the problems I've had, and also that I've been using neutral density filters. If you want to use bulb mode photography to improve your photographs, then watch this video next. I think it's going to help you out.